This is Life Transformation Radio. Prepare to engage. Seatbelt activated. Download initiated. Your quantum journey of transformation begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. Hi, I'm Rob Actis, best-selling author of The Law of Action, voice actor, business mindset coach, the podcast whisperer, and Mr. Action himself. Here at Life Transformation Radio, we are committed to share more about real life, love, the power of positivity, romance, and of course, laughter. We care about helping others find their internal drive and purpose. We celebrate life's challenges and overcoming them. On the show, my guests are amazing people who are forces for good in the world around them and live a life of transformation. My guest today does just that. In this episode, Michael Thornhill and I discuss how healing is possible for everyone, that you really, truly can overcome your past. So if you want to know that you are not alone, that everyone can heal, and how love can heal all wounds, this is the show for you. Michael is a co-founder of Casa Galactica in Peru, and they offer healing and evolution for the dedicated inner truth seeker. Oh, I'm so excited to have him on the show today. He's a professional channel, trauma-informed healer, an advocate of trauma-informed care, and so much more. Michael believes that to heal trauma at the root cause, we require an all-encompassing approach that includes the mind, body, and spirit. Perfect. Michael, welcome to Life Transformation Radio.
Hey, Rob. Thanks so much for having me. An absolute pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. So, I guess it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and I think it's important to discuss. We won't get into too much detail, but you were a victim when you were a child of traumatic ritual sexual abuse. Like, that's a lot. So we've had guests on the show that have been molested and have had sexual abuse, but the ritual part is, I think, something to dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, sure. Well, so just for anyone who's listening, I'm going to go a little bit into it, but not too much. So I'll try and get to the point without going too graphic. So sexual abuse, any sexual abuse which is done from an adult to a minor within it has deep levels of distortion which are used to manipulate, to create fear, to create secrecy, and to have devastating and long-lasting negative effects upon the life of those children, which often go uncovered, unfound, and just play out like addictions or trauma or anxiety or suicidal ideation, depression, PTSD. Sometimes people never get to the bottom of that. Now, the ritual component to that is where actions are usually done by groups of people in a way that creates an intense level of fear, which is used to create negative effects in one's life and is often done to create some level of power or money or power struggle for the individual. So by that, I mean that the abusers will do this for some perceived gain, and the victim will then end up having a life of intense PTSD trauma and often not know why they get to the bottom of it, because of part of that ritual abuse is what is known as mind control. And often there is a level of drugging, so the complete dissociation. So there's a complete amnesia from those traumas. So they often go uncovered, undiagnosed, and at the root cause of many of the symptoms of affliction.
Wow. That's intense. And, like I said, the key word there is ritual. And just to think that anybody could be that evil to do that to a child is just so overwhelming. I'm so glad that you have processed this and are now in a position where you help other people that are victims of sexual abuse and ritual sexual abuse. And, what I understand is that ritual sexual abuse is actually a lot more common than you would think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was living a life where I was kind of living in the rat race, doing commercial headhunting, running my own company, and kind of just drinking and doing a lot of drugs and thought that was just kind of like, oh, this is just how I am. This is just kind of addiction. When I start to peel away those layers, as many people do, when people start to get to the deeper levels and layers of that addiction, the trauma begins to arise, what those addictions have been functioning to repress. So intense feelings and intense traumas in those ways. And more people who are beginning to wake up, especially in the current times where people are taking a deeper look at their life, starting to change, perhaps have more healthier lives or do some more introspection, more and more of this abuse is actually coming up. And it is actually quite rampant, especially sexual abuse. And, more of the violent ritual abuse also attached along to that in some cases.
Wow. Now, you were a child when all this was happening, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. And I'm just thrilled that you are not in that space anymore. And so you, as you became an adult, you're living your life, you're in the rat race, and you are, going about your day to day, and all of a sudden you realize that your behavior is masking or covering up something. And then I would imagine that all of a sudden thoughts and memories started to appear.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the ritual abuse aspect actually took quite a while of my own healing journey for that to arise. And the reason for being that, if you kind of just go from like 0 to 100 mile an hour in your healing program or go right to the root of that wouldn't be possible to process, at least for most people. And it certainly wouldn't have been for me to kind of go straight to that root from kind of living in the shut down rat race world to recognizing and realizing that ritual abuse had occurred. So for me, it was starting to coming more in touch with plant medicines, getting more and more in touch with, okay, I think I was sexually abused, and then going into that sexual abuse. And then it was kind of like the deeper that you went down that rabbit hole, it was like, okay, I think I've seen it all now. And then it was deeper and then deeper and deeper. But with each level that I was able to see more of, I'd gained a deeper foundation and trust in my own ability to heal myself, of working with spirit, of my own support systems that was enabling me to kind of dig a little bit deeper in the cave. So if you can imagine like going down a mine shaft and you have all those structures that stop the mine closing in on itself, I would describe that being something like the healing journey, the therapy, the plant medicine work, the support systems and structures, which is really creating a foundation for me to excavate those deepest core wounds. And, this still goes on till this day. The work doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped, at least for me so far, but I'm definitely through, I would say, the deepest, darkest aspects for sure.
So were these people that were doing this to you, were they held accountable ultimately?
No.
So that must be something you have to deal with as well, and knowing that there's an open loop in all of this.
I think, at least for the most part, that's not really been my prerogative. My prerogative has been healing. And I think that the more healing work that I have done, the less important it is for me to think that in this linear time of human existence that people need to be held accountable and blamed. I'm more just happy that I'm able to heal and help other people.
That's great. So you all of a sudden discovered this had happened. Is that when the spiritual realm came into your life?
So, brief timeline. I was heavily addicted to drugs, running a successful company. My mother had been ill all my life, and then my mother passed about 5 or 6 years ago. And at that point, it caused me to take a deeper look at my life and my own mortality. And even though I didn't really have much zest for life, I would say, or I would more say ambition for living a long life, I thought I'd be dead by 30. Facing my mother's mortality and that really up close caused me to take a deeper look. And I started to get into meditation and other spiritual practices, which were the beginning, as a way to begin to start looking at this addiction. Because I thought, hey, I really think I want to actually maybe live and have a longer life. That took me to ayahuasca, and I drank ayahuasca. And then ayahuasca then showed me that the life that I was living, the addictions that I had were based at the root cause of not feeling unconditional love. The hole that was gaping from not feeling loved was at the root cause of that addiction, which then took me on a journey to have a few more ayahuasca ceremonies where I was living in Germany at the time. And then after that, I felt like I really wanted to go deep into that type of work. And it was so beneficial for me because I'd already immediately stopped smoking cigarettes, drinking, drugs within a few ceremonies. But that was just the kind of kickstart, the catalyst. It wasn't going to stop me from feeling those feelings are coming up. So I went on a journey to India, Nepal, and then found myself in Peru, where I am now, where I studied in the Amazon rainforest and the jungle with indigenous shamans and drank a lot of ayahuasca and learned how to hold ceremony. And throughout that process is when I've been in Peru, where the real deep excavation over the last 4 years or so of really going into the deepest depths of that trauma and excavating that pain and suffering at the root cause and that being released and healed and loved. Yeah.
So for someone who doesn't know what ayahuasca ceremony is, how would you briefly describe that, exactly what that is?
Ayahuasca could simply be described as perhaps having 20 years of meditation or 20 years of psychotherapy in a single ceremony. Very, very intense, powerful work. But how it actually manifests is that you drink a concoction of Amazonian plants, ayahuasca and chacruna, which then takes you into a realm, a multidimensional realm, which already exists, but opens you up to the awareness of that, where you can see things beyond linear time. You can go back to repressed memories, perhaps memories that you dissociated from, where your body was still in contact with those experiences, like in my case, and then being able to heal that trauma, which is then stuck at the level of the body. So this is a big part of the work, is the trauma healing work that the ayahuasca provides, and we provide it at Casa Galactica. And then the other aspect of it is, along with that, you can get into, on the other side of the spectrum, you can get in contact with that oneness, with the spirit realm, understand, all of these different beings that are helping us, find out what that unconditional love really feels like. So it's like an excavation and an illumination at the same time. And these ceremonies last anywhere between 3 to 5 hours, and they're done at nighttime. And they're held by singing what is healing songs known as icaros, which communicate with spirits and open different realms and do different healing work to help hold a safe space for people to heal and evolve.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing, and to think about it, I guess I understand it opens up actually your third eye to open up to spirit and the universe, and it's very, very powerful. It's been going on for a long time. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of years, right?
Yeah. So ayahuasca is actually present in various different traditions. The tradition that we've studied in is the Shipibo tradition, which is the foundation of our training. But all across South America and Ecuador and into Colombia, there are various different traditions. Yet this ancient technology, in my understanding, is a technology that was transmitted to Earth. The information within the ayahuasca realms of how to hold these ceremonies, transmitted by the plants. The language, the Shipibo language, which is an indigenous language, which the songs are sung in, which control spirits, very similar to kind of Sanskrit, where the words are encoded with different frequencies. It's a completely different language. And it's my understanding that this has been transmitted to Earth as a healing technology, just as you might look at yoga as a healing technology that's been passed on, meditation being a healing technology that's been passed on, or many of these other modalities. This is a healing modality that is native to this part of the world in South America, in Peru, where we live and work, where it's completely legal to be able to work. Absolutely. And this is actually a national heritage. So it's the perfect place to come to experience that ancient healing technology that really transforms lives.
Yeah, it's amazing. So if you don't have the ability to go to Peru and to do an ayahuasca ceremony with you, how is healing possible? People that have been traumatic, you can look and see people go to therapy, and a lot of people don't get a lot of benefit out of therapy. Some people do get benefit out of therapy, but what I've seen in a lot of instances is therapy combined with spiritual practices, meditation, being with someone who can take you on a spiritual journey, and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Rob. Well, it's our absolute belief that everything's always here and now. So if you're listening and you're like, well, I can't go and do that, and ayahuasca doesn't sound like for me, and I've tried therapy and it doesn't work, just know that healing is possible if you have that intention, that looking around and finding out what works for you. So there's so many different healing modalities like breath work. Breath work is a great way where you can start to tap into those realms, the subconscious, in an experiential way, but you don't necessarily need to ingest plant medicines. Therapy work that works with the intelligence of the body, like somatic experiencing or the trauma healing sessions, which I provide, anything like that, where it starts to go into the feelings of the body, really takes a lot deeper transformation in my experience than just talk therapy, because it goes beyond the level of the mind right into the subconscious. Now, for us, we also work with people online in multidimensional realms where we hold multidimensional healing ceremonies where we transmit the energies from the plants through the healing songs and icaros remotely, so that people don't actually have to come and drink ayahuasca. Of course, there's a different experience when you drink that, but the connection with the spirit is possible. So anyone who thinks, okay, I need to take a plant medicine to heal, that is possible, that will help you. But really, the understanding that we're all multidimensional beings and all these different multidimensional realms and guides are all here helping us now, beginning to tap into that and allow that magic of the infinite intelligence which resides in each one of us to begin to heal. So when you start to look into those spiritual practices, so whether it be like you're just like, I'm going to go to church, and people have amazing healing experiences from going to church. You don't have to believe all the stuff that I'm saying, but it's what is that connection to something greater than the individual self, that you see yourself as a human body, and tapping into that magical wonder in whatever way that feels resonant to you, and finding trauma-informed care practices, support groups that can help and assist you. But ultimately it comes and it begins with an intention, a desire to change and transform. There has to be a recognition of, I want to do that. And then once that is anchored in, the path will illuminate itself and you'll be able to find those things that will be resonant with you.
I love what you said, the magical wonder. I think it's so beautiful that society and people today, and I think COVID really did it, is their spirituality and the universe and their feelings of ayahuasca and DMT and plant-based medicines and all this stuff. They're opening up. People are starting, it's becoming more mainstream. It's not such a fringe thing. And people are being more public about their experiences with it. And, what I believe, and you can correct me if you think is different, but if you're listening today, there's a reason you're listening today. You're having this you're hearing this conversation because you're supposed to hear this conversation. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
They say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And, that's kind of how that is. And this may be just your first foray, your first experience, your first hearing about this. And it may take a few more, but Michael is here and I'm here, and we're created a safe space for you to hear about this opportunity to overcome trauma and to move through in a different way. And this just, pay attention to what you're hearing, pay attention to how you're feeling. And like I said, today might not be the day you're called. However, it may be just a little bit of like, hey, did you know there's this?
Yeah, I like that. It's like turning the light on and showing someone that there's a path there. And that might not be the right path for everyone. Doesn't mean that you need to take that to heal. But for those of you that feel that inner illumination that says, that sounds like that could be something for me, then just invite you to follow that curiosity and begin to explore a little more in that direction. We have plenty of information about what ayahuasca is and the plants and how the ceremonies work on our website that you can check out. We try to inform and educate people as much as we can as possible.
Yeah. And not only that, but I think what just listening today and the way that I operate my life is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And this may be just enough for someone to just go, that's interesting. I don't have any trauma. And then the way the universe works is, it just might be enough to peel off a little bit of that onion to all of a sudden discover like, oh, that's why my life behaves in this way. That's why I behave my life this way, because this happened. So that's also a possibility that can happen today.
Yeah, I think that's great, Rob. And, ultimately, I believe that naturally we're open, compassionate, loving beings that are here to share our love unconditionally with everyone else. So in my experience, if we're not expressing and living from that unconditionally loving place, it's like, okay, what happened? What happened that stopped that? Because that innocence of the child that is so wide-eyed in the world with curiosity and exploration and hope and joy, it's like through that experience of just incarnating and living life over time, we start to close down. We start to fear the worst. We start to cut ourselves off from each other, from community, from family, from love, from connection. So it's that reawakening to our natural, innate state, loving state, and open state. So you don't need to have had an experience like I have had to realize that healing from trauma can be beneficial. It can just be something like, well, my mother didn't pick me up quite as much as she needed to, or I was in a smoky environment as a kid and that actually wasn't great for my lungs, or I was bullied at school, or, I still didn't get over that breakup when I was 10 years old, or however old, or 15 years old, or however long old it may be. And, just seeing what is preventing us from living from our unconditionally loving truth.
Absolutely. So one of the things we talked about is that you're a professional channel. I've heard people that are channels. I've never heard professional channel. So I'd love to dive in a little bit and what you mean by professional channel. Is it the fact that you charge for it and that's what makes it a professional channel, or you're more in tuned, or how would you describe that?
I think the definition of professional means that I do it for my work. So for me, this is just something that I've dedicated my life to, honing that skill, which I will just say is available to everyone. Just like anyone can go and play soccer or football, or anyone can be a writer. You just got to spend time practicing, learning, doing that. So it's not something like, oh, Michael's got this gift. Like, no, it's dedication and willingness and openness to see myself and dedicate my life to healing myself, to transforming trauma. And what happens when you transform trauma, in my experience, you open up more to the natural beauty and wonder and magic of the universe, the innate multidimensional nature of all things. Because why does that happen, Rob? It's when we have trauma, we close down. When traumatic things happen to us, we close down. So when we heal trauma, we open up. So for me, it was a hand-in-hand process of healing trauma and then opening up to these different spiritual guides, realms, the plants. That's all hand in hand. And that's why we call it healing evolution. We talk a lot about healing and evolution. It kind of goes in hand. The more you heal, the more you evolve. The more you evolve, the more you've healed. So in terms of channeling really can be described as an ability to connect to an energy which is more than what one would call the personality or the ego. So for anyone who thinks, okay, that sounds a little bit out there, you could describe, well, look at an actor or look at a musician when you can see someone who's in a flow state and they're channeling that song, they're channeling the energy in that performance, they're channeling that character. It's the same kind of process, but that focus is then connecting to a higher sense of self, the higher self, or different spiritual realms, and then learning to be a discerning, clear, and open channel in highest alignment for the service of all beings, which really means just being here wanting to help people, and then using that, using those energies that are all helping us to be able to assist people in their own healing and growth.
So it's fascinating to me. So I'm not a professional channel. I definitely think that I do channel. When I had a near-death experience and I was overcoming a blood clot, I was laying in bed for a long time, and all this spirituality just appeared in my life. It was quite amazing. The one thing that if I would describe it, is that I get downloads and I'm able to communicate with people and tell them information that they need to hear that will make their life better. And I don't know if it's coming deep within me or it's coming from someone else, but I'm very compelled to share with these people this information. I did it the other night. It blows me away, actually. it's quite fascinating because I have a childlike wonder about all this stuff. I consider this airy fairy and woo woo, and here I am in it, and here I own Life Transformation Radio. And I think one of the beautiful things about Life Transformation Radio is that I come from such a childlike wonder in that in the past, I thought a lot of this was just kind of like, woo woo and airy fairy and stuff like that. And I've had a chance to be with guests such as you, and I've experienced so much myself after my blood clot that I never thought. My intuitiveness is just through the roof and empathic. I mean, I can feel like it's quite amazing how that is. And so when you say that anybody can do it, I never thought that I would ever have that ability. It's interesting to me because a long time ago, I was a radio personality in San Diego, and one of my shows was with psychic Samara, and she was a psychic and well-known psychic, and I would be sitting there running the controls, and she would be talking to people and stuff, and I'm like, oh God, this is just, not at all. And it's interesting because I've been around so many incredible people that are light workers and that are really in tune with the universe and spiritual practices. And I have a friend that's a shaman that's just incredible. And he wasn't always a shaman. And I'm more of these people that I'm coming across that are spiritual and that have opened up their gifts. They're just people. And all of a sudden they've just opened up their gift. I never in a million years thought that I would ever. And so I've been told, as you just said, that it's there for everybody and that you just have to tap into it. It's pretty remarkable, I have to say.
Well, thanks for sharing more about your own story and your experience there, Rob. I'm glad that you made it through that. That sounds like that was a little bit hairy there for a moment.
It was here. And I got another blood clot. And I just discovered that I had one that I've overcome is in my lung. And so, I've had a lot of near-death experiences. And I work really, really hard to make every day impactful and add value to us fellow humans. It's interesting that, purchasing Life Transformation Radio, there's a reason that I did it. And the reason was I wanted to give people a platform and a voice that didn't have access to that, and just another opportunity to share. The guests that have been on this show have been truly remarkable. I mean, you're quite fascinating in what you've overcome. You didn't go to much detail, but my mind was racing and I'm crying inside for what you experienced. And I'm in awe of the evil that is in some people, and just awe. We have a guest coming up soon that's going to be talking about sex trafficking, and I was trying to wrap my brain around having them as a guest because the conversations I've had, it's so prevalent, and no one wants to hear about it, and it's so common, and I hope that things are going to change because kids, man, we're so precious, and it has such an impact on them, and not only an impact on them as it did on you, but also so many people around them. But you have turned something into something truly beautiful and positive to help people heal and, to find inner truth and to find love in themselves. And that's just such a beautiful thing that you've been called to do, because you could have stayed on a path of destruction and you chose not to.
Well, thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. It's not been easy, but it's been worth it.
No.
It's been totally worth it. And I think my advice would be to anyone who's experiencing any level of trauma, however big or small, is just that beginning to turn towards it, beginning to investigate, beginning to seek out help. Your life can transform beyond your wildest dreams, because the field of trauma, what it is in my experience, if we've experienced trauma at whatever age, then it creates an experience field for us where we only see the world through that lens. So that lens can be very depressing, full of anxiety, stress, PTSD, and sadness. Once we break through those clouds, just like when you break through the clouds and you're going on a plane, you can see the sun again, and you realize it never stops shining. It's always been there. So I think that that's what happens with a lot of people who don't overcome trauma, is they don't think that that's available to them because it's so painful. And it's not anyone's fault. Right. It's just so painful. It's so much trauma that people don't think that they can get better. And I never, ever thought that I'd overcome drugs. I never, ever thought I'd make it past 30 years old. I'm 34 now. So I definitely did it. Can't deny that. Yeah. And the opportunity, I believe, is more and more available for people now because more and more people are talking about it. More and more people are offering, more people are talking. And it sounds like the world's getting worse on some cases because it's coming up left, right, and center. But I would say that it's actually a symptom or a sign that the world's actually healing because people are willing to talk about it. People are willing to see it. Absolutely. And that's the first thing. If you're going to go in a room and clean it out, you've got to see what the mess is in there first. So we're going through that phase collectively now, seeing the mess, the trauma on earth. And we've all got an opportunity not to take on the world's troubles, but to be responsible for our own mess in our own lives and be able to transform that so that we don't perpetuate that trauma onto others. And we give an opportunity for flowers to grow out of that fertile ground from our own inner transformations.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world that's just devastating. And all the light workers that I know and the spiritual people that I know, they're all saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And the time now is to really get clear with your spirit and yourself and to heal. This is a time for healing. This is, the pause. This is your time to be the best that you can be and to live your extraordinary life.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It's easy to say, oh, it's going to happen in a few years' time, or in a few years' time, it will get better, or in a few years' time, then I'll live the life that I want. It's just, I think that the empowering aspect is to recognize that wherever we are and whatever situation we find ourselves in now, the opportunity for healing and growth is here and now. Right. And the sooner that we turn towards that and find all the help that we need so that we realize we don't have to do this alone, the quicker that we can transform, although it's not a race, but we can transform and we can begin to express whatever it is that life's blueprint is here in service to all, to be able to help our love share and illuminate the path forward for others.
Yeah. The one thing that I want to share with the listeners that I think is going to be really fun for you, when you're looking for a car, and say you're looking for a Honda, and then all of a sudden you see Hondas everywhere. So I just feel that today, as you're listening, if you've come this far through this journey with Michael and myself, that now you're going to start hearing about ayahuasca. You're going to start hearing about the spirituality. You're going to hear about healing. You're going to hear about overcoming trauma. And it's going to just start appearing everywhere around you. Do you agree with that, Michael?
I think so. I think for those people who are feeling that call for sure. And I think an interesting question that one can ask oneself is the viewpoint I have of reality the ultimate truth? Are the current viewpoints and perspectives and beliefs that I have, are they set in stone? Or is there a possibility that there's something more out there for me that I've not seen or experienced or learned about? And I think that inquisition gives such a fertile ground for opportunity to start connecting with those things, whether it be ayahuasca or meditation or something else. It's like, is there something more to my life than I'm currently experiencing? And then that's where the transformation can begin that journey to that point, which is not yet seen.
Well, I want to thank you, Michael, for being here today. I just really fascinating what you do. And from the bottom of my heart, I am so thrilled that you have passed through the trauma that you have gone through and that you're on your road to recovery and healing and to just being on this incredible journey, and not just for yourself, but to be a catalyst and supportive of other people to get through their healing journey. So really just a joy to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Rob. Absolute pleasure. And thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. If you want to reach Michael, you can reach him at a super cool name. It's casagalactica.com. And on behalf of myself and everybody here at the Life Transformation Radio team, thank you so much for your support and taking time out of your busy and precious day to listen. We so appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me, along my very special guest, Michael Thornhill, to touch your heart, move your soul, and inspire you to live a life of transformation. I'm Rob Actis. Until next time.
This is Life Transformation Radio. Download complete.